Hello, my freaky darlings. And by that I mean, welcome, true believers. Would you kindly take this opportunity to like, share, subscribe, and hit the ring-a-ding thing so the aftermarket plasticine extraterrestrials will let you know about whatever else we put out? Though there are other ways to read and judge them, popular consensus says the spider film villains are defined by their tragic humanity. Therefore, how much a film makes you feel for them, rather than what they make you think about, seems to have become the conventional standard for sorting them in order of bestest to restest. Of the roughly 14 antagonists that have been featured, one is generally regarded as both greatest and most sympathetic. You know who I'm talking about. The one with enough arms to easily hug and ilkmate at the same time, which gives me all kinds of strange feelings. Though these days those feelings are mostly reserved for a certain mommy AF variant, who is fantastic in every conceivable way, but not as sympathetic or well-rounded as her cinematic predecessor portrayed by Alfred Molina.
If I were a rich man.
Molina Zoc was the tragic villain of Spider-Man 2. The Spider film, widely regarded as the greatest superhero film of all time, at least for about 4 years until 2008's Dark Knight knocked it off its throne. The good Dr. Octavius's turn to octopus and return to redemption is great storytelling, and I love it. I love all the Spider films, and in this case, I easily agree with the madness of the crowds. SM2 is my favorite, and Molina Zoc is a big part of that. But I'm not here to talk Doc Ock. I'm here to talk about the other Spider villain, who I would argue surpasses Molina Zoc. Ooh, controversial, get passionate, comment and discuss below, feed the algorithm. I am saying I feel that while Spider-Man 2 is the better film, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has the better villain. A villain that made my heart ache with these deep pangs that Molina Zoc never generated. It was a visceral experience. I could feel his agony. How can this be? How can I find SM2's Doc Ock to be absolutely phenomenal, but TASM 2's Electro to be, pardon me, and I really wish somebody would, nothing short of electric? Furthermore, why didn't I feel that same level of connection when Electro showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home? Interns, hit the dubstep! So I totally realized while the dubstep was playing that I'm actually wearing my octopus necklace today, instead of like a lightning bolt or battery necklace. And what are you gonna do? So, having read the major Spider-Man source material from which All Outs inevitably draws, that being the Ditko Lee, Romita Lee, Conway Romita runs from Amazing Fantasy number 15 to The Amazing Spider-Man issue 122, I think it's safe to say I have informed opinions on Spider-Man. Allow me to be perfectly transparent with you. I love Spider-Man's villains. Spider-Man has a rogues gallery that's up there with Batman's, brimming over with bad guys whose names will go down in the annals of supervillainy. I love Doc Ock and Green Goblin and Mysterio and Scorpion and then there's Electro? Yep, Electro is definitely a member of Spider-Man's rogues gallery. And kind of just a General John Thomas? I mean, Electro got his superpowers by being struck by lightning after refusing to help his endangered coworker unless his boss paid him extra. Like, I get it. You should definitely demand more money from your boss for doing dangerous labor, but don't ever use your coworker's life as a bargaining chip. After Electro gets his superpowers, he likes to juice and rob banks because his complex internal motivation is that he likes money. I'm sorry, but with all the creativity that was put into those early issues, compared to other Spider-Man villains, Electro really doesn't feel like any sort of living dynamo so much as a 2-watt bulb. 2V even. And the truth is, I've always kind of felt that way about him. Like, when I heard Electro was going to be a villain in TASM 2, I just didn't care the way I had for the previous Spider film villains. But then I went to see it, and...
I care now! You made me care more!
From Fox's first scene, I felt so bad for this harried guy who clearly lacked any social skills whatsoever. He was so incredibly, heartbreakingly lonely and likely making do with some really bad wiring. No shame, he's not the only one. My interns could tell you guys stories. Like all previous Spider-Man villains, Max wasn't a bad guy. Max needed a friend, a hug, and yes, probably a bunch of counseling. One big difference between Max and his predecessors that I think is worth mentioning is that Max really had nothing and no one. Goblin had a son, Octavius had his wife, Sandman had a daughter, and Brock was a slimy, creepy narcissist, but he thought he had a girlfriend for at least a little bit. The only things Max had were his toxic work environment that he gave so much to and received almost nothing but abuse in return, a lousy apartment, and, before long, an unhealthy obsession with Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong, especially after that obsession starts, watching Max could make you a little uncomfortable. Especially as that strange, whispery, and pretty indecipherable chanting starts going on under his rather tragicomical theme music. Max was the kind of guy who says stuff like this.
I'm nobody.
And believes it. His response to Gwen when she remembers his name for about 10 seconds is this.
Wait, she remembered my name.
He read to me as the kind of guy who might die in his sleep and then his body doesn't get found in his apartment until the rent check is due.
Rent!
Fox's performance is as on point as Melina's. His perpetual isolation, his loneliness, his desperation to be liked, to be seen as a person instead of living as an invisible man. That all wrenched at me. Everything about it felt so real. Even Max's transformation is the result of him being left alone, on his birthday, I might add. And then he gets ignored when he asks his co-worker to shut down the power so he can do his job safely, the complete reverse of his transformation in the comics. What's really interesting to me about Max is how, as a character, he is this weird intersection for thinking about types of power. Not just electricity, or having superpowers, but, most importantly, social power, the power of human connections. And when Max gains one type of power, he is neither granted nor able to build for himself any kind of social power. That inability to connect leaves him feeling attacked, betrayed, and hated by the whole world. Which is why he eventually says this.
I'm gonna kill the light. Everyone in the city is gonna know how it feels to live in my world. A world without power. A world without mercy. A world without Spider-Man.
What's that old saying about the child who cannot feel the warmth of the village will feel the warmth as it's burning down? In Max's mind, he intends to take revenge on a world that made him feel small, powerless, and invisible. He will make others feel the way he's spent his entire life feeling. This is, of course, not cool on Max's part, but every piece of it fits together so well for how this troubled person comes to this end, which makes it all the more painful to watch happen. Furthermore, Max's characterization matched with his power set is especially poignant in a world where electricity has allowed for revolution after revolution in people's ability to communicate with each other. It is telling to me how little it takes for Harry to convince Max to do the old villains team up. Venom and Sandman in Spider-Man 3 always felt a little forced, like getting them on the same side was just a little too easy. but the ease at which it happens in TASM too. Because of Max's characterization, it makes total sense that when Harry says that Max is needed, Max jumps right on to Team Sinister Six with barely a thought. Max doesn't join in out of hatred of Spider-Man. Or at least, that's secondary. What's primary is the connection. Harry tells him that he's needed, meaning he's wanted, meaning he's seen. That's what Max truly wants. A connection. Unfortunately, it's a toxic one that leads to his own destruction and the death of Gwen Stacy. Ugh, God, that has got to be the most brutal death in a superhero film ever. Look, I can't call any other villain first fight Spidey scene heartbreaking. But Electro versus Spider-Man? Spider-Man versus Max? Is. The build-up to it is intense. It's like the way you can feel the rise and fall in the air pressure as a really bad storm is cooking up. It's a situation that starts bad and just keeps getting worse until you kind of just want everything to stop so everyone can be saved, so everything can be okay, so Max can be okay. We see from Max's bad trip perspective as he heads downtown, scared and confused with little to no control over his abilities. It's distressing to witness everyone treating him as a monster. Though, to be fair, when a guy is a walking electrical storm who is compulsively sucking power out of an underground line, running and being a little alarmed is understandable. But at this point, Max hasn't done anything to hurt anyone. Until he is almost hit by a truck, and he responds by instinct, non-voluntarily, to protect himself. An army of police show up, and Max begs for their help. They ignore his terrified pleas for understanding.
It's not my fault! Stop! Please!
His ability to communicate is then almost totally debilitated when he notices that he is now, in the most literal possible sense, seen. He is no longer invisible, and perhaps for the first time in his life, he's in possession of a kind of power. I think the shock of being seen is what stuns him more than his actual transformation. It's self-evident that the experience fascinates him in the more traditional meaning of the word. But it goes without saying this is a less than ideal situation because, of course, the police attack, and Max once more involuntarily defends himself. It looks bad, but the evidence suggests he still hasn't caused anyone any permanent injury. Here is where Spider-Man shows up. He struggles to remember Max's name instead of trying to beat the living daylights out of him, working to de-escalate the situation as he can see what the audience can see, that Max is not well, and
I can see that you don't want to hurt anybody.
Take note, boys. These are called de-escalation tactics. And guess what? They are working. The way I see it, as unsettling as Max's behavior is, all he needs now is a little cool-down hug and therapy. And then, here's an idea, New York can have two superheroes. Notice how when he's asked, he avoids the grate to prevent himself from causing further destruction. Then, just as things are going to be okay, the police do something that is so not OOC for US police to do. Now, we have Max's first willful attack. Peter responds by trying to stop him, which in turn leaves Max feeling betrayed by the one person who he thinks is his friend. He quickly comes to believe that Peter set him up to be shot intentionally. This paranoia is the necessary catalyst to transfigure Max's fear and confusion into rage, and he lashes out, endangering multiple civilians in the process, which Peter then has to save in spectacular fashion. For his success, the cameras flip from Max to Peter, ending Max's 15 seconds in the spotlight. In Max's confused, electricity-addled mind, the world has thrown him away once more. Thus, whatever psychological insulation that had restrained Max's rage finally gives, and he attacks indiscriminately. The whole world and everyone in it a fair target for smiting. In other words, instead of a hero, we have a villain. I wouldn't call TASM 2 a masterpiece, but everything about this sequence is. It's freaking tragic. Max didn't have to be a villain, and he didn't have to be alone anymore either. Peter would have gotten him the help that every aspect of this sequence, every scene Max has had thus far, has made abundantly clear he's in desperate need of. And it all falls apart because of a cop's bullet. Once more, this feels so painfully real. But should all of this make him more sympathetic to me than Doc Ock? No. But Doc Ock just doesn't make my heart hurt the way that Electro does. I feel for Ock, but I feel Max. This disparity of feeling makes no sense. The character work, the writing, the acting is too good on both ends, but SM2 is the better film. Furthermore, Max is the focus of roughly 25% of his film, around 35 of 142 minutes, and his bits are splintered across the runtime. After his first fight with Spider-Man, the creatives have him locked up to get him out of the way for a while so the film can pursue other plot points and characters. Melina's Dr. Octopus, by comparison, is the focus of over 35% of Spider-Man 2, or 45 out of 127 minutes. Time that is broken up into prolonged stretches. We spend more time with Doc Ock. We hang out with him undisturbed. So why doesn't Doc Ock elicit the stronger set of feelings? By all rights, my freaky darlings, Doc Ock should be the more sympathetic of the two, and thus, objectively, he should stand higher than Max on the Spider-Man villain tier list. He's certainly more charming. It could be personal. My particular empathy with a specific character? I mean, do I seem like somebody who likes to be ignored to you? Oh, but that's boring, just so boring. So watch as I segue into what this video is actually about. Why do I think Electro is so much better at playing on my heartstrings? Gotta be that dubstep. To be frank, but call me Bambi, I love music. But I don't get music. So don't expect any sort of deep analysis of composition or structure or any high-end terminology. But I do get comics. If you watch my channel, you've probably heard me say something about how each medium has its own specialties and drawbacks. And if you've never heard me say anything of the sort before, then I'm very disappointed in you because you clearly haven't watched all my videos and you should correct that mistake ASAP. Comics are the visual medium that allows you to directly experience the thoughts of multiple characters at once, via thought balloons, though in modern times the balloons have largely been phased out in favor of the caption box. I can't help but feel when that change really took hold, we kind of lost a few things, but I digress. Cinema has done great work in bringing comics to life on screen, and the two mediums have a great deal of technical cross-pollination. However, for the 10 billion comic adaptations we've had in the last 2 decades, none of them have made grounds to put us inside an individual's head, to know their individual experiences and thoughts the way that you have access to them in a comic. At best, we've had a little temporally disassociated voiceover, like the openings and endings of the Raimi Spider-Man films, or Batman's opening dream poetry in BVS. We did have a consistent voiceover in Deadpool, which was nice, however, its metatextual nature keeps it as temporally displaced as the other examples. Furthermore, simple voiceover, which I love voiceover. I don't think it's lazy, I think it's great, but it does have its own disadvantages, which I'm going to discuss, but put a pin in that grenade. TASM 2, though, TASM 2 put us in the head, in the moment. The Electro suite from the film score was produced by the partnership of Hans Zimmer and Pharrell Williams. When it is combined with the other elements of the film, The result is positively synergetic. It creates a sequence that is greater than the total sum of its parts. Non-diegetic scores and soundtracks, that's music that we, the audience, can hear but does not exist inside the world of the film, have long functioned in cinema to tell us how to feel. The Electro Suite is most prominent in the scene I'll refer to as Max's Birthday Bash. It was composed to it and for it. It is synchronized to the events of the sequence with meticulous precision. Like all music in a film, it does tell us how to feel and how Max is feeling. But it doesn't stop there. Instead, it does something novel for a non-musical production. It serves as a direct hardline to let us know unambiguously the actual run of Max's thoughts in those moments. This is the film version of thought balloons and caption boxes. Film scores generally do not have lyrics, with the exception of when they will be in a language the target audience will not understand. Think Star Wars' Duel of the Fates. Lyrics are for soundtracks, the selection of popular songs selected by the creatives and featured in the film. Think Thunderstruck in Iron Man 2, an Immigrant Song in Thor Ragnarok. As Alyssa D. Artenay wrote in her essay, The Influence of Film Music on Emotion, instrumental music paired with visuals undoubtedly has the ability to impart meaning, but with the added context of lyrics, a deeper, more complex interpretation of emotional cues can arise, as it is during Max's Birthday Bash. As the Electro Suite plays, we are privy to all of Max's thoughts and feelings as they shift and change in real time. Its effect is different from the singing in musicals or a voiceover. Singing and voiceovers dominate our concentration when a film brings them in. Actions and spoken dialogue usually become a secondary matter. With this synchronized lyrical score, on the other hand, Electro's thoughts mesh with the events on screen, granting us a kind of passive telepathy that gets into your head and heart under the radar. As a method, it provides the same kind of balance between words and images that is found in comics, though this balance is generated differently for each medium. The music doesn't just allow us to sympathize with Max. Rather, it forces us to empathize with him. We know what it is to be him. Our lead-in that tunes us up to be worked on is the unsettling whispering from before that returns as Max is drinking up the power line and being threatened by the police. Indeed, throughout the early parts of the bash, these formerly indecipherable lyrics grow clearer but more frantic. Something's happening, mind distracting, agony inside of me, my pulse is racing, mental torture, self-destroyer, can't ignore the paranoia. Because we first heard it sound under his basic theme in his apartment, we know that his paranoia and dysphoria have been present for a long time, and gaining superpowers has only made these bad things bloom. It's a potentially dangerous mindset that he's lived with, a charge that has been building up, waiting for a connection. After Electro is shot, the music builds with the lyrics, "He shot at me, he hates on me, he's using me, fragility, electricity, afraid of me, he's dead to me, the Spider-Man is my enemy." As Electro strikes, the film's soundscape is totally consumed by a white-hot galvanic wub. And it's like this release of aggression has totally blown out even his own internal voice. When our focus moves from Max to Spider-Man saving the people, the score also changes to Spider-Man's theme. But when we get back to Max as he watches people running from him in terror, we return to his thought stream with a new set of lyrics. They lied to me, they shot at me, they hate on me, they're dead to me, and now they're all my enemy. Throughout this sequence, the Electro Suite builds, blows out, ebbs and flows with Max's scattered, disoriented, and anguished thoughts. It generates... Are you enjoying all of my electricity puns, by the way? It generates a level of intimacy that we've never enjoyed with any other Spider-Man villain. And I think it's this technique in this scene that allows me to feel so connected to Max. I need a transition story in my life. Something dubstep? fact that they didn't bring in a new version of Max's theme and the accompanying technique is probably the reason I just didn't really connect with new sexy Max in No Way Home. Now look, I loved the movie and I loved his reunion with Peter at the end, but while he was given more to do than Sandman and the Lizard, he just felt kind of underwhelming in comparison to what he had been. That's not to say that sexy, confident Electro wasn't fun. But it would have been good to have just a moment with the thoughts of this Max, who was stabilizing. Meanwhile, Fox's Electro in TASM 2 is the one part of that film that's totally burnt into my brain. You know, other than this. I really feel like the creatives caught lightning in a bottle on that one, and nobody realized it. Except for the Cinema Wins guy. His TASM 2 video is the only place I've heard this aspect of the film discussed. That man is a Spider-Man in his own right. He's making YouTube a better place one video at a time. I've read some reviews from around the time the film came out that said that people found the dubstep gratuitous, or they were against it because it was just following current trends, and I have a couple responses to that. One, what does the inside of this guy's head sound like? Opera? And two, you! This was perfect. It was a work of art. This should have been... It should have been a game changer. Max's birthday bash, the entire sequence with the Electro suite, when I first saw it, it was mind-expanding. It was jaw-dropping. I came out of the theater after TASM 2 with that scene seared into my brain as though by lightning bolt. And I was utterly certain that this was going to be like the Joker getting arrested halfway through The Dark Knight, spoilers, in 2008. For context, after The Dark Knight came out in 2008, it started this trend, especially in superhero movies, where villains started getting caught and escaping halfway through the movie. And I thought this was going to be like that people were going to see this and everybody was going to want to do it. I was so certain that soon all kinds of films would make us privy to the thoughts of characters directly through original synchronized lyrical scores. Even if TASM 2 wasn't a knockdown, knockout hit, I believe the idea was too good, too cool, too useful to not at least be experimented with. I thought to myself, what else could be done? What next? And I came up with the idea that what should be done next is to totally replicate the experience of comics, with multiple characters having thoughts in a scene at the same time. Imagine a fight scene with dueling lyrical scores, alternating, crashing, merging, splitting, playing off each other. A duet where each voice is the thoughts of one of the two combatants. What they'd done with Electro was mind-expanding, but still, that had to only be the beginning, because I'd come up with that idea about the duet. Imagine what somebody with actual talent and smarts could come up with, how far the idea could be taken. As it often goes, though, when I think something's going to be a breakthrough, apparently some bad reviews is enough to bury a good idea. I can only hope that now that the TASM films are having their renaissance thanks to No Way Home, and rightfully so, that this idea will get the notice it deserves, and it'll get picked up and finally experimented with. For sake, it's a technique that crafts empathy instead of simple sympathy that's so powerful. And I might add, according to the rigorous scientific standards I set up at the beginning of this video, it was this technique that knocked Dr. Octopus from position 1 to position 2 on the list of Spider-Man film villains, bestest to restest. Is that really my final argument? Is that really how I'm coming to a close? I guess so. Alright, if you've got thoughts, opinions, and ideas, or you just want to tell me how great I am, or you want to make a point to the contrary, go ahead and leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Help Ramblebable Productions grow into the terrifying media empire I know in my heart we can be. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to be seeing you all again very soon. Until then, my freaky darlings, eins, zwei, drei, and Excelsior!